Hey guys, and welcome back. Today we're going to dig into a little bit of DBT, kind of go into how it works, what it does, how to configure it, get it set up. Starting off here in the requirements.txt. Now, depending on which database you use, is which libraries you're going to install. Now, you see I've installed a few in my requirements.txt, and this demonstration is going to be in DuckDB, just because that's kind of the in process easiest thing for me to show and demonstrate. So we're going to go through kind of DBT and DuckDB. I'm going to bring some data in. I'm going to process the data, so I'm going to clean it and then do some business aggregations and let DBT kind of run all that. And then I'll connect my DataGrip to DuckDB. And A, show you how to connect DataGrip to DuckDB if you've never done that before. And B, we'll get to see the tables and the setups that we make through the kind of DBT lifecycle here. So if you notice, I have DuckDB, Postgres, Snowflake, BigQuery, and Redshift. If I do a DBT init here, then you're going to see that those are my choices. It only gives you the choices for the libraries that you've actually installed. So if I were to uninstall a couple, it would give me less choices when we're doing the current setup here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to activate my virtual environment here. I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to do that. I'm using UV, and I could activate it with UV, but this also works. Oh, whoops, if I spelled correctly. Okay. All right, so my virtual environment's activated. Now I'm going to DBT init here. And we'll give it a second. Okay, so enter a name for my project. I'm going to call it Duck Lake Example. And then you notice that my list of databases that I'd like to use aligns with my requirements.txt file, right? And that's the only way that those options show up there. So if you don't have them installed, the libraries, and it's not going to let you pick something there. So I'm going to pick DuckDB. It's my number 2. And that's that. Okay, we are set up. So let's take a second here and go through what that did for us. So you'll see that it populated a lot of things. Okay, it populated a DBT project YAML with some example things here. Right, there's your profile, and we'll look at the profile in a minute. So model pass, macros, snapshots, and then you'll have some models here and examples. This is a materialized view, and you'll see in here you have tests just with a get keep. Same with snapshots, same with seeds. There are some example models. Okay, there's a my first DBT model in SQL, and there's a my second DBT model in SQL, and if you'll notice there's the SQL that you're used to plus a little bit of Jinja. And here is the schema. So there's the name, starter DBT model. There are some macros and analysis folders, just in case you use any of this. So that's the first kind of part of this. The other part that sets up is it says, you know, this DBT project YAML this profile Duck Lake example. So whenever you go, in order to find this, this is my profile YAML. I'll show you where it's at. If you go to your user, and you see these are kind of like light gray, I'm going to, on a Mac, Command-Shift-Period, and that hides your hidden folders, and then Command-Shift-Period again, it shows all your hidden folders. So I'm going to go down to DBT, and I'm going to open DBT up, and I'm going to go to profiles.yaml, and this highlighted one is the one that was created. The top one is one I had from another demonstration. But this bottom one, you'll notice there's an output dev. The type is DuckDB, the path is dev.duckdb, it's relative path. Sometimes I will go in and make those paths fixed paths. So the actual full path, just to make sure there's no kind of changes when I'm working on things. In case I change my folder structure or move things around, absolute paths, they kind of work. But relative paths are fine, just again, personal preference. So this is what you're looking for. We're going to be coming in here and probably changing some things as we go through. You'll see that prod allows me 4 threads, dev is using 1 thread. That's just for the multi-threading of DBT. So that is the profiles YAML. Okay, so DBT debug, we can't run it from the root. We have to cd into the directory that it's in. So from here, I can run dbt, not det, dbt debug. Okay, and what dbt debug is going to do is it's going to run all the checks, make sure it can talk to the database, make sure Git's installed. So it looks for your profiles YAML. We saw the profiles YAML earlier and where it is. It looks for DBT project YAML, that's here. It looks for Git. Git has to be found, and it is. And then it looks for the database. And here, since it's DuckDB and it's in process, it creates the database using the local relative path. It just created it right here for us in the project. So the dev DuckDB exists right now. So that's where kind of we're at, right? We've set everything up. We've ran DBT debug. DBT debug works. That's going to be your tool a lot of times for these connections and to go through things. Always make sure DBT debug comes back with all green checks. Especially when you're making changes to the profiles YAML or the project file, because it checks and makes sure that's valid. And YAML gets tricky with tab indents, and the indentation in the YAML it's kind of out of whack sometimes. All right, so now that we have ran DBT debug, the next part of this I'm going to do is I'm just going to run DBT run. You see that it has a couple models here, and so it's actually doing some things that it kind of lets you set up with. So I'm going to kind of walk through what's built in here right now, and I'm going to do DBT run. And we're going to see DBT run against DuckDB. And so you get to see what happens here, right? It registers DuckDB, 1 thread. We saw that earlier. It's going to SQL table my first model. It runs, and it goes through each piece of that, each of those models. And so in order to look at DuckDB and see what exactly is going on here, we're going to walk through real quick as a side task, connecting DataGrip to DuckDB and kind of looking through that connection here. So let me pull up DataGrip. All right, you'll see my DataGrip up on the screen. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to do a new data source. And I need to go way down because I haven't used DuckDB in this in a while. So it's going to be under Other, and you're going to go over to DuckDB. Now you have 2 options here. Okay, you can, and I'll give you the example. I'm not going to, but you can do this. And this gives you an in-memory instance of DuckDB. So if you want to test things, if you want to run scripts, if you want to practice things, you can just come in here, type memory, and you have a nice little in-memory instance of DuckDB to play around with. We're not going to do that. Okay, the other 2 options you have, or you can add a new DuckDB. If I click this plus, that means I'm going somewhere and I'm going to create a DuckDB in that folder. But also that's not what I want to do. There's this little small 3 dots that are at the end that are barely visible that I can click. And once I click them, I can go find my things here. So if I go to beginner, intro to DBT, and then I need to go into the DBT project itself, and I need to pick out my DuckDB. And I'm going to open. Now a couple things here to be really, make sure you see everything that you need. First I'm going to test a connection. Always test before I hit OK, just to make sure that there's nothing going on. The other thing I do is I go in here schemas, and I make sure that I can see everything. So all databases, all schemas, I apply that, and then I hit OK. And I go over here to dev DuckDB, and there's dev, and there's main, and there's tables, and you see my first DBT model. So if I double click that, you'll see that there's an ID1 in here, and there's a view, my second DBT model. This is where that materialized view comes in, and ID1. Okay, so you see that it's actually running things against the database, and we'll go in there and we'll do a lot more than just that. But that's how you connect to DuckDB, and this is how you keep track of what's going on in DuckDB in a good way. Okay, so the first thing we go through is the seeds folder. We'll go through the seeds folder. I put some products in there just from my latest project I'm working on, the Locker and SAS. Before I do that though, I need to do some cleanup. So I just wanted you to see how I clean up. This came with examples. We saw the examples run. So I'm going to delete the examples folder and everything in it. So models will be empty right now. And then I'm going to go over to DBT project YAML, and I'm going to get rid of this. Okay, now it's clean. Basically, if I wouldn't have, I would have those examples kind of hanging around for a long time and kind of messing with what I'm doing. And also, if I just deleted the examples and didn't come over here to the project YAML, it would have caused me errors as well. So I don't want to do that. So our next step here, right, is I have products. Now, seeds is make sure you're using seeds right. What seeds does is it's like domain tables. Okay, so if you're using things like countries don't change often. Well, in the news lately, I may be wrong, but for the most part, countries stay the way countries are. Zip codes are another thing that don't change often. You know, just a lookup table that needs to go in your database that doesn't really change a lot, and it's just reference data for other things. You can put in the seeds, and then you can seed your table, and then that'll add this data to a table in your database. So one of the things I do want to say is that since we're dealing with DuckDB, you'll get an error if you keep a lock on it. So if I bring this over, okay, right now I have a lock on it because I'm using it. So I need to, let me close this up so you can see, I just need to deactivate it. Okay, and that takes the lock off the database that DataGrip is holding. And then I can come back over here and I can run dbt seed, and we'll see what happens. So running dbt registered 1 of 1. So I inserted 3 rows into a table main.products. So it took my seed data, the CSV that I put in the seeds folder, and it created a table in the database for me. Again, this is for like domain table things, for lookup tables, for things that don't change often. You can drop them in there and you can run the seed. And then you can come over to your database here, and I'm going to refresh, and I'm going to open up my database to main, and now I have 2 tables. I'm going to go ahead and I'll leave those there. Those don't hurt anything. But you'll see the products table here. Let me close others, and you'll see that it worked, right? You'll see that I have product data that I can now reference as I go through things, and that's all there. So the seed worked in my DuckDB. Okay, so now that we've done that and we have successfully inserted that data, we're going to move a little bit to ingesting some more data. So we have two options. Okay, the normal way. I say normal, not the common way. You have some kind of ingestion pipeline going. You have pandas polars or some reading in, and you store your data in raw somewhere. You store data in a raw table, you store data in a raw whatever, and then you run dbt across that. Well, since this is a dbt tutorial, I want to do a lot of things using dbt features. So the DuckDB and dbt have a thing called external tables, and you just have to configure the source for a CSV that lives somewhere. It could be anywhere. Right now it's in my repo, which again, I'm not a fan of all my data living in my repo, but for demonstration purposes, it's in there. So you can treat this external table as a source and read it in and use it in these models without having to actually ingest it directly into your database outside of dbt. So let's get that set up. So in my models folder, first thing I need to do is a new file, and this is sources.yaml, YML. Okay, now sources is a little tricky. It's in YAML. I'm gonna copy paste cheat a little bit here, and we'll go through it. So sources is sources up top. My name here is external. The external location, you'll notice that I just used my folder, and the CSV that I want to bring in here is product usage. Okay, and you'll notice the table here is product usage, name, and the other thing I guess I could have stayed with is this, because I think it reads name from here. So there's that. So there's the external table. Now we can reference it in the model itself. Okay, and in the model itself, using Jinja, I'm going to reference two things. I'm going to reference the seed table, and then I'm going to reference this external table, and I'm going to combine them together here. I think I'm going to do a full setup, right? We're going to talk about raw, we'll talk about marts, and we'll talk about analytics, or bronze, silver, gold, or staging. Some people do raw, staging, and marts. Some people do raw, marts, analytics. Some people do bronze, silver, gold. It really just depends on what you want to call them here. I'm just going to use raw. I'm probably going to use raw, staging, and analytics here, or raw, staging, and marts. Let's use raw, staging, and marts. That sounds good. Okay, now my thinking out loud is done. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. But we're going to do a piece at a time because there's some things I want to show you here, and we'll get into them in a second. So let's add some folders to our models. We're going to call this raw. Oops, I need to be to type things first. Come on, you can do it. Okay, new folder. Okay, we're going to do raw. I'm going to do a new folder, and we're going to call this staging. And we're going to do a new folder, and we're going to call this marts. Again, raw, marts, analytics, raw, staging, analytics, bronze, silver, gold, raw, not raw, cleaned raw, however you want to call it. It's basically just a 3-layer thing here. So I've created my folders, and we're going to go through each piece of this, and I'll show you how I'm going to do each piece. Okay, so let's start off with raw. What goes in raw? Because raw is empty. Raw is really nothing. And what I mean by nothing is raw is your sources. Okay, you don't always want to move around your raw data everywhere, right? You want your raw data to be centralized. So I'm going to move sources YAML, and sources YAML is going into raw. Okay, that's my raw data. My source right now, I have external source currently. That is the file, the product usage, where it sits. And I have some seed data that we're going to use as well, and that'll be the difference between the way we reference it. So basically in my raw is just my source, where my sources come from, where are the tables at for the source, and the external tables or whatever we're using. And if you would have dropped data in manually, then you would just reference those tables as your source as an actual table. Okay, so that's it for raw. We're going to leave raw alone, and we're going to move into the whole staging part now. Okay, so now staging. Staging is one-to-one, right? Your silver layer, your second layer, however you call your layer, it's a one-to-one match. One file for one file for one item. So if you're a table, if it's another file, whatever you're cleaning here, you're just going to do one-to-one. And so everybody's probably used to using SQL and Jinja and doing it that way. We can also use Python models. So we'll use SQL and Jinja in the business layer. But for staging, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to use a Python model. So I'm going to call it product, because we're going to clean product. And that's going to be product clean.py. Okay, and then I'm going to cheat. I'm going to copy and paste. It's really light. Okay, really light model that I'm doing here. So I'm referencing. You see this dbt.ref. I'm referencing product. This is products. I might have to make, what's my source? My source just has external, but I should be able to reference this products, the seed that we did. I might need an S here. Let me make sure. And the name is the name, strip lower, return df. Okay. So now I'm just going to see what happens here. Let's see what happens. Let's see what we break. dbt run. But not that. dbt run. I gotta be in the folder too, so make sure you cd into the actual folder. And concurrency thread, finished running, encountered an error, could not set lock. That is because if you ever get that error, you have to go over to your dbt and you have to deactivate your DuckDB because it's holding the lock on it like we did earlier. So now I have that situated. We're going to run again and see what happens. Okay, good. It failed. Failure in the product clean blah runtime model. df name. The relation is not column by the name of str. It shouldn't, because that's a string, and it shouldn't be a column. So okay, so hold on. Let me do a little bit of finagling here. Okay, so the way the error's reading, it looks like df is not a data frame. So let's .df it. DuckDB, when you return a DuckDB relation, you can use .data frame to fix that. So we're going to try that. Make sure it's being accessed the way it should be. Okay, good. Looks like cleaning. Looks like it's running the model. Let's see if it breaks again. Or if it breaks, we fix it. That's what we do. We'll give it a second. I have made sure the lock was gone. Good. It's completed successfully. And it completed it. And basically, I just lowercase the name and strip some things from it. Again, if this were normal, there'd be a lot of things here. But returning a df here, returning a data frame, it makes a table out of it. Okay, and in the real world, I don't use df because you don't know what df is, right? In the demonstrations, I will for brevity. But if this was the real world, this would be something like products, right? And then I'd rename this so you know exactly what we're doing, right? I have a data frame named products. I do products, and I return products. And I can run, right? Just gives me the same kind of thing. And then I'll connect DataGrip to it and see it's ran. So I'll go over here and I'll connect DataGrip again. So let's go ahead and refresh. And now I have products clean. You'll see there's a products clean with 14 columns it made. And when I click it, right, the name's here. Again, nothing's really going on here. There's no magic or things, basically just going lowercase everything. So there was not really any much of a change here from products, but products you see are all uppercase, and then product clean is just all lowercase. Nothing special, nothing that's magical, just things that allow us to do more if you want to do stuff in here, okay? So understand that and know that you can use Python instead of SQL. So if you're wanting to do around some data frame manipulation and you're more comfortable with that, you don't have to use SQL in these. You can directly use Python. So while we're doing that, I have another bit of code to copy, which is fine. It's just the usage clean py that I created over here. And this is, whoops, this has to do with this product usage now that we have in our source. So new file, and this is product usage clean dot py. Again, I'm just going to do it in py right here. Same kind of thing, right? I'm going to be using a little different table, but same kind of concept. Okay, so copy and paste that in there. So little differences here for you to look at. This is dbt source external product usage. So that comes from the sources file. Okay, external product usage. The products reference came from dbt ref, so it's referencing this products seed that we made. Okay, so it's just a little bit of different of a reference here. So instead of we're using ref for this product seed, and then we're using the actual source for the external product usage, and that's this product usage CSV. So now we're taking this raw that's sitting in a CSV, and we're kind of reading it in here. So I'm going to do the same thing. You notice I've learned my lesson. I appended the .df here from the last part of this. So we're going to dbt run again. And I have it locked because I was testing it. So this is one of the things that, it's an error that you'll get used to. I'm going to deactivate it. And so when you see that, you immediately know, oh, DataGrip is still holding the lock on that file. I need to go over to DataGrip and deactivate. And now it's going to run both things. It ran them both. And now they're both in my database. Okay, so again, let's recap a little bit. I have sources that's sitting in raw. My sources point to an external table called product usage. And I'm sorry, yeah, my sources go to product usage, and my seeds are in seed for products. They're like reference tables, lookup tables. So staging again, one for one. I have a product clean and a product usage clean. I'm going to bring over my DuckDB in my DataGrip. And of course, we're going to refresh it, and then I'm probably going to forget again, and it's probably going to error out about a lock for me and get mad at me. So there's product usage clean, and this just reflects the usage thing that I created as a CSV and brought the CSV into my DuckDB now, using it as an external table. Okay, so let's move that out the way and get my Visual Studio Code back. Good. And that is staging. So now the next part of this is I have two nice clean tables, right? Maybe you did more, maybe your data needed more, or maybe you use SQL here, maybe you use Jinja here. I just used Python to show you can also use Python. So I did that, and now we're going into the mart. Now we're going into the gold layer. We're going to just join, maybe aggregate something, probably not, but maybe some counts or something. We'll see. Let's see what we're going to do next here. And that is going to be in the marts table. Okay, so in March, we're going to join the tables together. We have two clean tables, and I'm going to go into March, and I am going to do a new file, and that new file is going to be product usage detail. And in this case, it's .sql, because I want to use SQL now. Okay, so now I have .sql. And again, I'm going to cheat. There's my cheat code. You notice I'm selecting usage, usage date, quantity, product ID, and then p.name I'm renaming to product name. I am doing a from the ref usage clean because now it's not an external table. We're referencing the actual table that we made. And then left join against ref products clean. And it's going to be on product ID equals product ID. And then this select will make the last table. So let me go over and make sure I have dropped my lock on DuckDB. It's going to take me a while to learn to do that. And then I'm going to do BT run. And it's going to go through the whole process again as long as I don't have any errors. Ooh, I have an error. Depends on a node named usage clean, which is not found. You're correct because it is called product usage clean. Make sure it matches my tables. Product usage clean, product clean. Good. dbt run. That's what I get for preloading files. And completed with an error. Table P does not have a column named product ID. That may be correct. So let's see what it has. I have a product ID in that one. And this one just has ID. Okay, so product ID on ID. Okay. P does not have a product ID, but it does have an ID. Let's see. Hopefully it does. I'm looking at it in DataGrip. Oh, well, again, I looked at it in DataGrip. You know what that means? It means I set a lock on it. All right, so let's see what we got. Good, good, good. And what doesn't it like? P does not have a, oh, of course it doesn't. That's why I put P as, oh, I know. Why? Because I also didn't change up my select statement. All right, you guys should have told me that. Now, look, you know SQL, most of you who are watching this video. You need to make sure I don't make these mistakes. All right, let's try this again. dbt run. Give it a second. There we go. Now that I've made all of my rookie mistakes, you'll see that it went fine. Now let's go back to the database and again, put a lock on this database that I'm going to forget to take off here in a minute. And now I have what? I have to refresh some things here. And what do I have? Product clean, product usage clean, refresh. Did I get anything new here? Product usage, yes. Product clean, yes. Two views. There's my guy, product usage detail. Okay, so this is set up as a view. And then we'll go through here and it's all here. There's the join. You'll see the product name with the usage. Okay, it's all nicely configured. So that works. Before I move this off my screen though, I'm not going to do that. I am going to do a nice deactivate so I don't forget as we go into the next pieces of this, because apparently I am really good at forgetting. All right, so one of the things, the next thing I want to talk about is one thing that trips people up. Okay, it's when you specify a schema, then it's the way DBT kind of handles schemas. And we're going to kind of go through that piece by piece. We're going to add a schema to product usage detail and then kind of walk through that and how to kind of fix that. Okay, so you see I've add config schema equals marts. I want to run this again and we're going to see what that looks like. Okay, target is dev, it ran. Now let me bring over my DataGrip here. Let me refresh, make it reactivated. Okay, let's move this over. Okay, now you'll see that schema says main underscore marts. Okay, it doesn't say marts. It says main underscore marts. So there's a main that's being created with our tables, and then when I say, oh, say schema marts, it doesn't make schema marts. It makes schema main underscore marts. That's because main is my default schema. So let me see what happens if I change my default schema. And how do we change our default schema? Okay, so I removed that. Let's try this a different way. Okay, let's set in the DBT project, let's set the schema. So you see that Duck example staging, schema is staging, marts, schema is marts. So let's run this from here. Let's see if I get the same problem where there's a main underscore, or if this is marts underscore something, or how this kind of plays out. So let's see what this does. Okay, they all ran. Now let's go back to my handy dandy DataGrip and refresh it. And refresh it. Okay, so let's go back under here. Okay, you'll see that instead of staging, I have main underscore staging. But that's not what I wanted it to be, right? I just wanted it to be staging. Why does DBT do that? So main is actually coming from profiles, right? We looked at profiles earlier, and you set a schema in profiles, and that schema applies to everything. But instead of that schema being the schema and overriding the schema with these schemas, it puts an underscore and makes them go together. So when you have main in your actual profile, you get main underscore staging. And then marts becomes main underscore marts. And you can put dev over there. You could put prod, so you get prod underscore staging, prod underscore marts. So maybe you don't want that. Okay, and the way to clean that up, I'm going to show you. I have another snippet here, is with a macro. Okay, so what you do is you override it, and the macro runs, and in the macro, basically you get the schema you want. So if I do a new file here, and I say this is get custom schema.sql. Okay, here's your macro, and we're going to macro this up. Okay, macros, just custom schema name, and basically it combines things, okay, in a way that makes sense. That's a little different than with the underscore. Okay, so let's take this and let's apply it. So now that I have that macro in place, I'm going to rerun dbt run, and it's probably going to fail because I had a lock on it. And did I unlock it? Did I remember? I did remember. Look at me. Okay, so I'm going to refresh that over there, and I'm going to bring this back, and now you see you have marts and staging the way we wanted it to, right? So you have these main marts that were combining the two things together, and we didn't really want that. We wanted to be able to pick our actual schemas here. So that macro let us do that, and now you see that this product usage is in this mart schema the way we want it, and the staging schema the way we want it, and that just kind of keeps it clean, right? So you don't have those prefixes, and you really make it do exactly what you want it to do, the custom name here. Okay, so now we have a couple other folders here, and you see snapshots, and you see target, and you see logs, and you see analysis. So this will be our last piece to kind of go through everything. I'll do the ones that are pre-populated first, and then we'll go through the other and how to use them. So target is interesting. If you ever want to see what the SQL was that was run, you can actually come in here because you may have something in this Python or in this thing that you're doing, and you want to know, okay, did it translate it the way I wanted it to? And this is the actual translated code that it actually runs. And you can kind of come in here and see that. So let's compare the product usage detail. So product usage detail here, I have these refs and this left join. What did that actually run? Well, if I come in here, it ran dev.staging.blah against that, where product ID is that. So it gives you the actual SQL. Just in case you're referencing the wrong thing, or you don't really know what you want to reference here, you can come in here and see what was actually compiled, right? And then this is what's actually going through as the running SQL. So this is what it compiled to, and this is where it ran. And you'll see the thing itself that ran. And that's going to blow up because it's just for reference. It's not actually, if it was real thing, that would be back there, and that fixes it. Okay. So that's what's in your staging, or sorry, in your target. Okay, and target can be deleted at any time. It just gives you your compiled and your run, and then your graph summary, run results, JSON, all these things here. So you don't really have to keep it around. It runs every time, so you can get rid of that. And you don't want to necessarily send this up to your repo. You can ignore that. We'll go through tests in a minute. Logs are just logs. You don't have to create a DBT logger. It logs everything for you. So it's all in here. And you can see if something breaks, you can see why it breaks, or go back to why it broke. So those are kind of all in there. So the analysis folder, it's for SQL that you want under version control, but DBT run doesn't actually run. So you still get the power of the references, you still get the power of being able to write SQL and compiling it, but it just doesn't run when it runs. So it's for ad hoc exploration, one-off reports, audit queries, things that you can use to run, but you don't actually want to run. So if you run DBT compile, it compiles in target. We saw what target does earlier, but it actually doesn't run when you do DBT run. So that's what's in the analysis folder. Let's close that one. We've covered logs. We showed a macro, right? Our custom SQL. Once we have that in there, we can kill the get keep, because this does get keep automatically. We went through models, right? We created our models. We saw that in raw we had sources, and then we did our marts in SQL. And just for demonstration, I did staging in Python. So those were our models. We went through seeds. Again, we can get rid of this get keep, right? Because this seeds is for this product is really that join data, that data that is just fixed. It doesn't really change a lot, a few rows of lookup data, right? So that brings us kind of down to a couple left. So let's go through snapshots next. Okay, so snapshots are for data lineage. We're going to make one here. So we'll do a new file, products_snapshot. If I type, it always does that to me because I'm clicking in a bunch of screens. But that's okay. Come on, snapshots, you could do it. New file. Okay, here we go. Product snapshots. And in this case, we're going to do a SQL again. Okay, and then I have my little snapshot I worked on. Let's pull this over. Okay, so here's basically what it does. It takes a snapshot of the current system, okay? And then it takes a snapshot after it's run. And if anything changes, then it validates, right? It closes the old, inserts a new row. It adds DBT valid from and valid to columns automatically, and kind of schema tracks here, okay, to make sure that it's data lineage. So if I run this, I don't run it with DBT run. I run it with DBT snapshot. Now, me being honest, this is not one I use a lot. I don't really use this tool for data lineage exactly. So which one? It depends. No, you're right. You're right. This is products. That's my typo. I don't use data lineage a lot in here. There's a graph that we're going to see. Oh, there's my lock again. There's a graph that we're going to see that definitely it shows good information, but not the type of information that I use DBT for personally. But it's good to know and good to have because a lot of people do use it. And DBT snapshot, and you can see I'm going through this kind of live as I go, with little pauses to write scripts in between. But what don't you like? Oh yeah, because it's supposed to be ID font. An ID, we found that earlier. Um, so let's try that again. So you'll see the errors, but also it gives you a chance to see the errors, right? That's I always tell my students, you don't know how to troubleshoot the error if you've never seen the error. And the more you see the error, you know how to troubleshoot the error. The first time it's always longer. After you see it the third or fourth time, it's not as long. So here you get a snapshots. I created a snapshot. Snapshot now exists so that if there's any kind of changes or any things, you'll see it. And let me show you what that looks like just so you have reference now that we ran it. Here's my snapshot table. And if I double click that, I get a product snapshot. And this is the product snapshot. Okay, and you'll see there's the IDs here and when it was updated and the valid to. So if something in here changes, right, the lineage changes, which is good for tracking data across a lot of different deployments and a lot of different people. So you can see kind of exactly where it broke and where kind of things went astray. So that's your snapshots there. Next thing we'll kind of go into are tests. You could run tests in the DBT itself as you're going through, or you could have them separate, and we'll just talk about this separate folder here. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is tests. Two ways to write tests. You can write a test, put it in the test folder, and if it returns any results, then it fails. So you're writing a test that checks different things kind of from a higher level. Or we can put schema tests inside the actual folders. So for example, let's do one. I have a couple here. Let's do one for marts. So in marts, we do a new file, and I'm going to call this schema, and this is in YAML. I'm going to call it schema, and this is in YAML. Okay, so now I have this schema YAML, and that schema, we're going to this guy that I did, there's my version. So version 2, product usage detail, okay, that's the name, and there's a usage ID. I'm going to test to make sure it's unique and not null, and then there's a product ID, and I'll make sure it's not null. Okay, so this is specifically for this mart, and it goes in there, and if I run dbt test, then you get the test to run, hopefully. We'll see. Register, add my lock. Yep, you guys can make fun of me in the comments. I don't mind. This is the story of my life when it comes to connecting DataGrip to DuckDB and running it. It's just one of those things that if I'm not doing a lot of work and I'm just going back and forth, then whoops. Wait, what? Reference column, product ID not found in from clause. Oh, because ID. Okay, stand by. I'll see if this works. Does this work? Maybe not. And if not, we'll check. But if I do a lot of longer work and I'm not doing demonstrations, yep, that worked. If I'm not doing demonstrations, then I don't lock it as much. But going back and forth between demo and DataGrip, I lock it all the time. I forget about it. Okay, so made the changes, we ran DBT test here, right? And you'll see that these tests checked. It checked that the ID is not null, and it checked that it's unique, and it passed all the things, right? So this is one way to put a test inside of your actual folder that's related to that specific table or view, and to test it to make sure that it has the data that you expect. And then you can get a little more complicated, but these are kind of the generic ones. And then the next thing I want to put together here is a SQL test in here. And we're going to say usage has valid products. Right, so we're going to test to see if the usage file has, and we get rid of the get keep now, it has valid products, or if it's we introduce some bad data on the way. Or so let's do this, and from when I wrote this earlier, we know that this is ID, not product ID, and U does have product ID, but this is where p.id. Okay, so I'm selecting usage and product ID, and I'm left joining to make sure that I get all of the product IDs from usage. And if the product ID or the p.id is null here, that means that there exists at least one ID in usage, product usage, that is not in the actual products table. So I made up a product somewhere along the lines, which you don't want to do. Let's make sure that I don't have anything else silly on here, and let's see what happens. Cool, and everything passed. So I don't have to worry about let's see, example, what's wrong with that? Depends on a node named usage clean in package, which was not fun. Okay, good, that's fine. But yeah, finish running the test, so everything is looking good, and our tests are running like we want them to. Okay, so I say it's running as it is. I looked at the warning here. That usage clean is a correct warning, because it should be product usage clean, and I want to pause the camera a second just to look at that, because I want to make sure I'm giving you the right things. And there we go, that looks better. Now everything ran. Cool. Now you see the has valid products, and it passes. That looks a little better. Okay, so this runs, and the way the test folder, let's talk about the test folder. Test folder, if you create a SQL and it gets any results back, it fails. So you're trying to write these to test for things that shouldn't exist. In the test that you write in the schema, here you're writing YAML and testing for schema-based things. Is this column unique? Is there nulls in this column? And there's a whole bunch of other matching things. So that's how you write tests both ways. Now there's one last feature. I think I've covered about everything in DBT here that I can cover. One last feature that I want to show, and I need to set that up real quick. Okay, last piece of this. I keep saying the last piece. We're going to look at the docs. So first of all, I'm going to do dbt docs generate. Can't remember if it's plural or singular. We're going to see. Cool. So I did the docs. Now I have to serve it. dbt docs serve. And this will be a window that's on my thing. So let's move this over. And here is what you get when you do that. Okay, you get the database. You get the product usage, what columns there are. Let me pull this up. Let me shrink this a little bit, sorry. Shrink, will you shrink? Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay, so you can see the tables and views and the SQL, example, simple SQL from it. There's products, there's product usage details. You get the details, the description, all the columns, right? There's all the columns and what they are, and there's the data tests that are on them, and there's what it depends on, and there's code, and what it's referenced by, and what it depends on. Okay, so that's it gives you the whole documentation of your data, and it's really good for a lot of reasons. One, if you get a junior coming in and you have a lot of data and you're running DBT, you can let them go through the docs and you can see exactly what's in here, what it depends on, and kind of how it flows. And the other thing that's good for this is just going through for when you're doing SOC 2 or one of the compliance texts, then being able to show this and show your details on how your data goes through is definitely something that's helpful when you're having these conversations. And this is the last piece I wanted to show for the day. Thank you guys for putting up with me going through all my locks and all the fun and breaking things. I hope this is a good, thorough coverage of DBT for you at a high level. I know there's a lot of things I didn't get into, using Jinja versus not using Jinja. There's a lot of deeper things and a lot of more advanced topics that maybe come in the second video, but this is a good, at least foundational video for you to go play with, break, get your hands dirty, and hopefully use it in your next project. Thank you guys so much, and as always, please like and subscribe. I appreciate the time. See you next time.